Welcome once again to the Friday Beer Break. It is, of course, brought to you by the Bier Markt, live music Thursday through Saturday, and the Rock and Roll Brunch on Sunday. And we are joined by Chris Schryer from the TorontoBeerBlog.com.
Hello, Fred.
American beer.
America.
American from San Francisco, the land of Shanghaiing, as well as Portland. There was a show I watched about how people used to get shanghaied.
My father and Carl were shanghaied
They would go to bars, they would get abducted,
and taken to China.
and they'd wind up as indentured servants on ships, and this happened up until like the early 1900s.
Different things happened, and then they had
That's a very interesting story.
San Francisco was a capital of it.
This beer coincides with that story because its first production was in the late 1800s. So maybe you would have a sip of your Anchor Steam beer, find yourself shanghaied.
Well, let's hope not.
Wouldn't happen at the Bier Markt today, though.
No, not today.
Not
It's
today.
a wonderful place where they have no Shanghaiing.
0% chance of Shanghairy.
Yes, it's safe. It's very safe. It's so safe you wouldn't believe it.
So the Anchor Brewing Company has been in existence in San Francisco since the late 1800s. Even before that, I think it was actually the mid-1800s that they started. But by the 1960s, they were nearly out of business. Prohibition, not friendly to breweries in the States.
What?
Along comes a fella who liked the Anchor Brewing Company and their products by the name of Fritz.
Fritz?
Fritz Maytag.
Fritz Maytag. Sounds like money.
Heir to the Maytag fame. You never have a problem finding a washing machine in that guy's house.
No, and I guarantee that all of the uniforms at Anchor Brewing Company are very clean.
Yeah, neat and pressed. Fritz Maytag bought the brewery in the 60s, infused some money, and revitalized it. And it's often pointed to as a turning point in North American brewing when so many breweries were being absorbed into the big ones and beers were becoming more and more homogenous. Anchor stood out.
He is the one.
What style of beer is this?
This is a highly unique style of beer called steam beer or California Common.
What is a steam beer?
A steam beer is a beer specific to the California, specifically the west part of California, the coast. And these are beers, follow along now, kids at home, make notes.
Are you following me, camera guy?
That are made with a lager yeast, but fermented at ale temperatures. So you remember lager yeast likes to be fermented cold, that's why Pilsner or Cal. They had the caves, they had the mechanical refrigeration. In the late 1800s in California, it wasn't quite the frontier, right? But there was maybe 8 Starbucks at that point, so it was still pretty primitive out there.
Very, very low end.
For a brewery like Anchor to have mechanical refrigeration was just a non-starter. So what they would do is they would make this beer and they pitched lager yeast into it, but they would chill it in the top floor of the brewery and they had these big louvered windows that they would open. And the cool sort of San Francisco fog at night would be what would cool the beer to the point they could put the yeast in it. That was called steam beer because like vapor would pour out of these windows. It looked like the beer was steaming. And then they would put this lager yeast in, but they would ferment it at the warmer ale temperatures, which is really unusual. Then they would lager it, which would be sort of normal. And what you get is this really cool beer.
This is almost just like classic chemistry.
It is fascinating, really.
So this beer effectively is unchanged since I think it was 1894.
How many times do you think they ended up with byproducts that were just completely
Like
different styles
undrinkable?
of beers that we never get to see the light of day anymore?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That undoubtedly would have happened.
So what? Cloudy, not cloudy? It looks good enough to me.
Do you get a little mint or parsley in there?
I get the parsley, not the mint.
Yeah, so it depends on your palate. Some people say mint, some people say parsley, but they get that sort of, green.
It's very
Peppery.
smooth, like it's got a real creamy taste to it. Normally you'd expect that to be a really sharp tasting beer, but it's not, it's really soft.
Well, again, it is lagered, so it mellows it out. But yeah, Anchor Brewing, if you are in San Francisco on business, on pleasure, whatever, that is an amazing brewery to go.
Is
on
it the
tour for.
original location?
Not the very,
Since the
very
60s,
original.
though.
Oh yeah, like a very old building. Now they've expanded it and they built on it, and there's a very modern brewery element to it. But they've done a really good job maintaining the history, and it's a fascinating historical tour.
It's like the Keith's Brewery. I don't know if you've ever done the Keith's
Yeah, it's
Brewery.
a little less kitschy.
Yeah,
Like they're not in costume, I don't think.
Oh, Mr. Keith's just left.
And I missed him again.
Which gets kind of weird, but like that sense of history,
Yeah.
that building is hundreds of years old.
Yeah, and they, I mean, they tell you all about it, right up through to now and what they're doing now.
All right, so Anchor Steam Beer available at the LCBO and the Bier Market. Live music Thursday through Saturday, and the Rock and Roll Brunch on Sundays.